Our video today is one I am super excited about. It has been months, maybe even years in the making. With a history of hand injuries that I have experienced, we decided after this surgery that we were really gonna take accountability. We researched powerlifters, strongmen, rock climbers, arm wrestlers, ancient Shaolin Kung Fu techniques for Iron Fist and everything in between so that we could whittle it down and find the best stuff to strengthen our fists and strengthen our wrists and make some bulletproof hands so that we can have success on our return. Hopefully all of our research and all of our practice, all of our trial and error can also help you when you follow along so that you can train hard, you can develop some iron hands, and you also can have success when you fight. Through months of rigorous testing and trial and error, and we'll describe all of that at the end of the video, all the stuff that didn't make the cut, we have whittled it down to the 4 most important things for a boxer like myself, like yourself, to strengthen your hands and your forearms so that you can punch hard and confident. These are going to be our dead hangs from the bar, our kettlebell turnovers, our rice or sand bucket, and our forearm and wrist stretches. Let's get started. Our hand conditioning begins with our bar hangs. So when I'm doing this, I like to hang for 3 one-minute rounds with 30 seconds of rest in between. When I grip the bar, I am holding the bar with my thumb on one side, my 4 fingers wrapping around on the other side, and if I have the length on my fingers to be able to get my thumb on top of my index finger and squeeze it in tightly, it's very important when it comes to making a fist that I'm trying to shorten this distance right here between this knuckle on the thumb and this knuckle on the index finger. This is where all of my power and tension should be squeezing in, because that's the same power and tension that is going to support and pack your fist when you punch. We follow up our 3 one-minute hangs with our kettlebell turnovers. Now, I think every boxer out there has been super impressed watching Triple G do these kettlebell turnovers at Abel Sanchez's gym. These are a very, very humbling exercise. You'll find even if you're a really, really strong guy that turning this kettlebell over is tough. I'm pretty strong. I only use a 25 or a 30 when I do these, okay? When I'm doing this, I'm trying to turn it over 25 times, left and right on each hand. I try not to bounce it, and I try to drop the tension as I do so, where I turn over, re-engage, turn over, re-engage. When I do these for a single set of 25 left and right on my left and right sides. This is gonna feel a lot like arm wrestling, where you're rotating that radius and that ulna around each other in your forearm. I will also say, as somebody who has struggled with golfer's elbow over the years, these are the #1 exercise that got me ahead of that. These exercises are wonderful because they help to strengthen those extensor muscles on your hand without actually having to extend your hand. It's just rotating that wrist back and to your outside. Following the kettlebell turnovers, we get to the most important part of this hand conditioning, which is the rice or sand bucket. When I'm using this, I'm going to do 15 repetitions of every single one of these exercises I show you, and the exercise in between each of these are going to be extensors with your fingers. It takes about 3 minutes to get through each hand, to get through this whole complex, which means it takes about 6 minutes to do the rice or the sand bucket with your hands. The rice bucket is a little bit easier. The sand bucket is noticeably harder. I'll usually start the week with the sand bucket, and then after the first or the second day, I'll go to the rice bucket, which is a little bit easier on my hands. Now, it's important to remember that you can throttle the resistance on everything you do with the bucket by just going deeper or shallower. Shallower means you get less resistance. Deeper means you get more resistance because you have the weight of all the rice or sand above your hand contributing to that resistance. I start this work with my extensors. So when I'm doing this, I jam my fingers down deeply into the rice or the sand, and then I extend my fingers against the resistance. I open them up and remove them from the bucket and then come back down and do this again. I do 15 repetitions of this, and I'm going to do this exercise first and then in between every other exercise, and I'm gonna finish with it as well. Especially as boxers, we bias making a grip so much that to balance out our strength in our forearm, to get some extra meat on our forearms and to get more stability in the wrist, it's important that when we do our conditioning where you're not in a fist, you are practicing that extension so that you're a nice, balanced athlete. After our extensions, we're gonna lock our hands wide, our fingers long and strong and rigid, and I'm gonna stab those fingers down into the rice or the sand and rotate against that resistance. I step in, rotate, drive in, rotate. I do 15 reps of that, and then I return back to my extensors. After 15 reps of that, I go back to that stab and rotate, but now I'm turning in the other direction. From here, back to our extensors, and then we get to the, as I've heard the strongmen call it, doom fist, where I'm grabbing as much of that rice or sand as I can, and I'm trying to pulverize it in my grip. Drop, grab and squeeze, drop, grab and squeeze. 15 reps, back to our extensors, and then we get into our wrist rotations. I stick my hand deep into that rice or sand, and I rotate to the right, as big of a range of motion as I can. The deeper I get, the harder this will be. The shallower I am, the easier this will be. You may find when you do this that the bucket moves, so you might have to get down and hold the bucket in place as you're doing this. From here, back to my extensors as we do between every one of these exercises, and then I'll do those rotations again in the opposing direction, and I finish, as promised earlier, with those extensors. This is 15 reps of every single one of these exercises. The extensors are every other exercise, and it takes about 3 minutes a hand. You will get a hellacious pump doing this. Your hand might cramp up. That's okay. Slowly build your intensity until you're doing all of these driving deep down to the bottom of that bucket. After doing your hangs, your kettlebell turnovers, and your rice or sand bucket, you've got a huge pump on your forearms. Your forearms and your hands are probably sore, and now you must finish by stretching out all of that soft tissue while you've got that pump on. That's going to contribute to growth, that's going to contribute to hypertrophy, and it's really important to remember that it is not enough to be strong. To be a good athlete, you must be strong and mobile. You must be strong through a range of motion. What does not bend will break. So let's get into it. We begin this stretching complex using mats or using the flooring. I'm going to place my hands down, my fingers pointed away from me. I'm rotating my elbows in tightly, and then I'm leaning into my fingers to get this stretch. I hold each of these stretches for 15 breaths, and then I move on to the next. The next following this is going to be stretching these same muscles, but in a more intense way. Now, I'm pointing my fingers towards me, and again, leaning backwards now in to those fingers for 15 breaths. From here, I make a fist, and I want to think about this flat surface being placed against the ground, and then I'm again leaning back to get this stretch on the top of my forearm up that line of the thumb. From here, we move on to the most intense of these floor stretches. I'm sure you've seen Artur Beterbiev doing this as push-ups. That's extremely impressive. My wrists are not that strong yet. But we take the back of our hands, fingers pointed towards us, flatten them out. Again, rotate those elbows in and lean against, lean in to those fingers to get that stretch. After 15 breaths, we move on to our final stretch. The same anatomy, now being stretched with your fingers all pointed towards each other. And again, I can just press down on this to get that stretch up the back of my forearm. At the end of these stretches, I shake out my hands, I give myself a couple rotations at the wrist to make sure that everything is lined up as it should be, and that is the end of my daily hand conditioning. Our hangs, the kettlebell turnovers, the rice sand bucket, and the stretches are the 4 best things that made the cut, that really strengthened our hands the best and the way they needed to be strengthened for punching, not for rock climbing, not for arm wrestling, not to be a professional strongman. But we tried lots and lots of exercises and workouts before we streamlined it down to these. We did hammer curls, we did farmer's walks, we grabbed all sorts of little elastic doohickeys to help strengthen our hands that are very popular with jiu-jitsu athletes. We grabbed those captains of crush grippers and we practiced with our grippers. We grabbed a rough log. We practiced doing holds, static holds with the log, as well as roughing up the inside of our hands just to thicken the skin and callus the skin and try to fill out that space in our hands. We even spent a couple months doing some iron fist training. You may have seen that on the vlog, where we were practicing punching into sand, punching bare knuckle, trying to strengthen those fists and those wrists. Eventually, we eschewed all of these things and ended up at what I would consider the prime, the best lineup. And that's what we've given to you folks today. I complete this hand conditioning protocol Monday to Friday. I'll do it 5 days in a row. I rest on Saturdays, and I don't do it on Sundays because that's our sparring day, and I want to make sure that my hands and my wrists aren't compromised or fatigued when they're actually hitting something like elbows, hips, and heads. Like good scientists, we've of course kept track of all of our data and our measurements, and we have had wild success. Beginning this, both of my wrists were 6.5 inches, which is very, very, very small. We measured this 1 finger's width down from this little bony protuberance here. So we'd be making these measurements right here. I took my wrists from 6.5 inches to 7.75 of an inch, and this was the same on both hands, which means we put over an inch onto each of our wrists. When I was in school getting my exercise science degree, I was told that you couldn't put any mass on your wrists. So I just thought that I was going to have to carry the burden of having small hands and weak wrists through my boxing career. But we have definitely learned that this is not true. Our numbers for our upper arm, again, measured 1 finger down from that little crease of my elbow, were even better. We put just shy of 2 inches onto our forearm there. We went from 12 inches at the beginning of this all the way to 13.75 of an inch, and I'm pretty confident that I'm gonna be able to get that last 1/4 of an inch in the next couple months. I'd be very surprised if continuing to run this protocol didn't get me 8-inch wrists and didn't get me 14-inch forearms, which is a huge improvement from where we began this. I will also say that as well as those numbers growing, my wrist and my forearm getting bigger, the confidence I have with throwing punches is through the roof. I have thrown some bad shots in sparring where I've caught hips or I've caught the top of somebody's head or I've caught an elbow, and I know that these are shots that would have injured my hand previously, and the newfound strength and density in that fist meant my hands were fine. I was unscathed, which has given me the confidence to throw, especially for the body, where there are the hips and there are the elbows and there are hard bits that you can catch, and it's really changed my game a lot. You folks will see that as we return on our road to 100, hopefully in June. The other thing I will say anecdotally is with this additional mass on my forearms, I can feel that weight. As somebody who's been boxing for a long time, I feel like I've gone from using a 6-pound sledgehammer to like a 10-pound sledgehammer. Even though the lever is the same length, those extra couple ounces in my hands and on my forearms really make me hit harder. I have definitely noticed a difference in sparring and noticed a difference hitting the bag in how solid and how powerful my punches are with slightly larger forearms. If you folks follow this protocol, as I did, strictly and in a disciplined manner, you will also grow the strength in your hands, the solidity of your fist, and put weight on the end of your arm. That's gonna make you hit harder, and if you're hitting harder, undeniably, you too will have success when you fight.